There has been some delightful reaction to my last video, so I thought I'd talk about a related topic. In my previous video, I argued how there is more to the human mind, in the wider sense, than the rational faculty alone. There's lots of components dealing, for example, with image recognition, memorization, the pleasure-pain mechanism. I call these the peripheral components of the mind. In this video, I want to talk about one of those components, the one that determines sexual preference. So, just like the example of facial recognition I was giving in my last video, the component for sexual preference will determine which sensory input is sexually attractive. To a large extent, this is simple image recognition, and not more sophisticated than recognizing a smiley face. That is, after all, what most pornography is about, simple imagery. And this applies to men much more than to women. So there's a peripheral component in the male mind that interprets the image of a female body and gives the appropriate sexual sensation to the rational faculty. This simple model explains male sexuality to some extent. But it doesn't work at all for women. There's little demand for purely visual pornography from women. Look at which women men find attractive. You can conclude this simply by looking at which kind of woman is put on the front covers of men's magazines. There clearly is some variety, but we all know that there also is a common pattern. But the common pattern for men, attractive to women, is character traits. Humor, skills, success, most important the alpha male trait, controlling the social environment, being the one others look up to, and take advice and orders from, this kind of thing. That's also why unknown women are much more frequently shown on front covers than unknown men, because the woman is typically being shown for being visually attractive and then becomes famous as a consequence, but the man is shown for being famous in the first place, and him becoming perceived as being attractive to the female observer is then a consequence. A technical term for this effect is hypergamy. Women marry up. Or to quote Rand, female sexuality is largely hero worship. In a very abstract sense, it can be seen not only in human beings, but most other mammals too, and also in many other species that are not mammals. In fact, it's so common, it could even serve as a defining characteristic for the entire female sex. The biological reason for this is that the female invests more in offspring. The female has to invest at least the time of her pregnancy. So, the amount of offspring a female can have is always limited by her lifetime. But the amount of offspring a male can have is limited by the numbers of females he can have sex with. That explains a general cross-species tendency. The males go for quantity, the females go for quality. So regarding the choice of partners, the female has the more difficult job. She needs to figure out what quality actually is. Especially in human beings, that is a very complex task, and women do indeed go for a variety of things, such as humor, skill, wealth, and most commonly social status. None of those properties can be determined by merely looking at a man and letting a peripheral image recognition component do the job. To detect those properties in a man is a feat of reason. So the input line to the rational faculty that gives a woman the sensation of attraction must be influenced in large parts by the results of the rational faculty itself. So there is a feedback mechanism to the sexual component from the rational faculty. Or as Ayn Rand would put it, sexual attraction implies a value judgment. She discovered that attraction is in large parts, even for men, strongly influenced by value judgments, and therefore the choice of partners says something about one's own values. And I completely agree with that. But I believe that there is much more to say about it. Fetishism, for example. For this one, I want to tell you a little story. I noticed at some point that, as an adolescent, that I don't know of any single black girl I found attractive. I should say I'm German, so I didn't know many blacks in person, although of course I've seen a few on television. I was mildly concerned that this could imply subconscious racism, because I did not only not know of an attractive black girl, I couldn't even imagine one. And remember, that was before the internet. Of course, blacks were on average less wealthy, educated, and the like, but should that stop me from imagining one that is attractive? Did I subconsciously thought none of them are or could be any good? Because consciously I didn't believe that. I forgot about the question until much later when, at a sunny summer day in London, I was living in Cambridge at the time, I saw plenty of black women in the London Hyde Park. And then I remembered and also got my answer. The trigger wasn't skin color, but how they dress. London being the world's capital of suits and fancy outfits, there were plenty of young, properly dressed middle-class women, the type of woman I was used to see with white skin color only. I define fetishism as the sexual attraction towards artificial imagery, especially clothing, rather than natural imagery such as the female body. Why would it matter how a woman is dressed? It's an advanced quality detection mechanism. The rational faculty programs another component with that kind of imagery that it has concluded to correlate with your values. For example, if you want an ambitious or powerful partner and either move in a conservative environment or the only ambitious people you know of have been fictional characters on television, you are likely to have a fetish for something conservative-looking outfits such as coats, trousers and blouses, or even suits and uniforms. In the case of you having your imagery from television, you might also have watched a lot of fantasy and sci-fi, in which case your fetishism might be more exotic, and unfortunately also aiming at a kind of clothing real women won't be likely to wear. In any case, the attraction is indeed again a response to values. I would speculate that the guy who's into high heels and dresses, I call this the princess outfit, is not looking for an ambitious woman, but rather for something like a loyal housewife. And it appears that a majority is into the slut outfit. And I don't think those are looking for a relationship at all, but indeed for sex with as many different women as they can have. So fetishism doesn't only serve to identify quality, it also serves to identify the women who are easy, so if that's all you want, you don't waste time hitting on those you would need to make an effort for. Now, I've been talking about men looking for women for a while because I was starting to talk about fetishism with a personal example. And pro-quality fetishism in men indeed proves that male sexuality is sometimes a form of hero worship as well. But for women, it's the norm. And indeed, there is no such thing as a slut outfit for men. Whereas women being into guys in suits and especially military uniforms is a cliché as old as those outfits. Fetishism is often considered to be an aberration of a minority. In fact, it is ubiquitous. Observe, for example, how the epaulette of military uniforms have made the shoulder strap, this thing here, get into contemporary fashion. And I totally agree, a woman dressed with a jacket or shirt featuring those has certainly an increased impact on me. And since I believe that fashion designers know what they're doing, I'm certain I'm not the only one who feels that way. Although I might be one of the very few people who actually knows why. It's a response to values. And notice how much more advanced that makes human sexuality in comparison to that of animals. Because I can easily believe that certain higher animal sexuality is in part influenced by values too. For example, a female mammal of a social species might be attracted to the alpha male because of his social status. I don't actually know whether this has been observed, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was. In fact, I would be surprised about the opposite rather. But the human mind is capable of associating values with artificial symbols and then feeling increased sexual attraction towards a person featuring them. Since no higher animal is capable of producing clothing or otherwise modify their own looks, I think it's safe to say that fetishism is unique to human beings. So coming back to Rand, I believe that she correctly described her own sexuality. But she made the same mistake that most people make, to think that one's own is the norm. The good news is that there is much more diversity. The sad news is that most people's sexuality is just not as classy as hers.